Renowned wildlife artist Robert Bateman not only paints magnificent pictures of wild creatures, he gets to know his wild neighbors and works to save them. For 13 years, the Get to Know program has connected hundreds of thousands of young people with nature. In that spirit, Olympic gold medalist, world champion rower Adam Kreek and rower, adventurer, and writer Jordan Hanssen have come together as part of OR Northwest rowing team to support the Canadian Wildlife Federation and Get to Know. They embark on a Salish Sea expedition today. It is my pleasure to welcome Adam Kreek and Jordan Hanssen to Studio 4 to tell us more. You back to Studio 4, and you first time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Fanny.
I think scared with measure. I think not having a little bit of fear and stuff like this is silly.
Tempered fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Tempered fear is the best way to put it.
Exactly.
If you're not fearful at all, I really wouldn't want that person on the boat.
And who's going to get you in the Salish Sea, really?
Who?
Well,
the Salish sea monster?
Maybe, perhaps.
Boat traffic's the main thing we're worried about.
Yeah.
I bet that's true.
Yeah, boat traffic and currents. If we hit the currents wrong, or boat doesn't have the power to get out them, even motorized boats sometimes don't have the power to get out of some of the strong currents that you see on the inside passage.
Really?
So we have to really be careful about what currents we take and what time of day that we go through some of the really narrow passageways.
Talk to any coastal pilot on this coast and they'll tell you there's some crazy folks out there.
Well, yeah, and in order to be seen by other boats out there, we have a system on our boat called AIS, which is Automatic Identification System. So that's, we're producing enough power on this little rowboat with wind generators and solar that we'll be able to be as seen as any other boat out there, but still, you just gotta be on top of it.
Yeah, and we got to have a special broadcast system on board. So most of the large ship have what's called an automatic identification system, and so they'll be able to look at their computer screen and they'll say, "Hey, look, here's the James Robert Hanssen ocean rowing boat. It's got this vector. It's going this direction. It's this speed, and this is where it is on the GPS map." So the larger boats that could do us damage actually have a screen that can see us.
I see.
Yeah.
So tell me about this little rowboat. Who built it?
So
Who built her?
It was built in England, the hull, and that was for a race in 2006. So it was a one design. So there's, I think, between 7 and 10 hulls floating around the world, but this is the only one that I know of in the Western Hemisphere. And it's a very unique as far as this goes, because last time we focused on making it a race boat. We wanted to make it as light as possible. This time around, it's a research vessel. So we have more power in terms of battery storage. And again, we have probably about 3 or 4 times as much solar power as well as a wind generator. So we can power a host of instruments, taking atmospheric data about the water, stuff like a thermosalinograph, which does temperature and salinity.
All that.
Yeah, a thermosalinograph. Don't you have one?
Well, I have one in my car. Yes. So back to the beginning of it all. Who taught you to row?
A guy named Michael Hagman in 2000. He was my rowing coach. I grew up in the desert in New Mexico, and I was on the swim team. I got tired of chlorine when I moved up to Seattle for schooling, or actually Tacoma down at the University of Puget Sound, and I wanted to get on the water, and rowing seemed like a great way to do it. And from the first time I got in a rowboat, I was hooked.
Immediately.
Yeah, and so I did the flat water racing all throughout college, and I was looking to pursue rowing, and I was training at a club in Seattle at the time. And this poster showed up that had an ocean rowing race, and that there's something I like just as much as rowing, it's travel. And so this great-looking fancy rowboat traveling down a 20-foot wave with these 2 taut, tan guys looked like a pretty good mix between both of those. And so I kept asking my friends, and they kept saying yes. And 18 months later, we were ready to row across the ocean from New York to England, and against 3 other teams from Britain. And we, in 71 days later, we won.
New York to England.
Yeah.
But they didn't pack enough food.
Yeah, on day 16.
You know all the stories, don't you? Now the truth
which is
comes out.
why Adam is, he's being a big guy, he's cookie on the trip.
Yes,
So he packed all the food.
I'm in charge of the food.
But yeah, on day 16, we realized that we didn't have enough food.
I
And
see.
so
you did what about that?
we made it work. So we just cut what we were eating, and we stretched it out, and we were probably down to around 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, and we were burning between 7 and 10, and we just lost weight. Between the four of us, we lost combined about 145 pounds.
I see. So the skinniest rowing team in the history of. Now, how did you two meet?
Well, there was an ocean rowing race down in San Francisco, and I'd gotten involved with a local boat maker in Victoria, Harold Allen, who makes these Whitehall rowing shells. So they're recreational shells. You can throw crab traps, your dog, your kid, all that kind of stuff in them. And so he was pretty keen to, to showcase his boats at this race. We'd row out under the San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, around a buoy and come back in. And when I was down there, Jordan was there. And before doing that, I was looking for a way to get into more of a recreational style of rowing. I felt like I was done with flat water, high pressure racing.
Was this after gold medals?
This was after gold medals. So this was after 2008.
You mean when you grew up?
When I grew
You're
up.
all growing up.
You should never grow up, Fanny.
No, I
never
know.
grow
and
up.
I know you never will.
So
I want to go on this expedition. This sounds like fun.
Well, you should. You should come down, hop on the boat.
I can play the music. That's
Yeah,
about
Absolutely, yeah. So Adam plays the mandolin, and we have our teammate Richard Tarbill is actually a classically trained violinist.
it. So am I.
There
You
you
are?
go.
So Richard and I, didn't you know?
Yeah, you could do dueling violins.
I know.
We could.
We could fiddle on down. I mean,
Why not?
we have a huge dance hall on the rowboat, so I mean, you guys can fiddle away.
This is going to be fun.
Adam and I
And
did
we're
some
saving
swing.
wales to boot.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So back to you,
Back to the story. Well, we were
to the real story.
the story. So I met Jordan down there, and he started asking me like about the Olympic gold medal and about rowing at the Olympics, and I started asking him about rowing across the ocean, and about not packing enough food, and all this kind of stuff. And it was
details.
The details, right? How do you go to the bathroom? Different things like that on the boat. And after we connected, then we built a friendship that weekend, and then. A month or two later, Jordan gives me a call up and he says, Adam, I'm rowing across the ocean again. I'm wondering if you want to come with me. And my first response was, well, I really need to think about that. I can't, I don't want to say yes. And so I hang up the phone, and my wife was in the room with me, and she says, oh, who was that? And I said, oh, it's Jordan who's on the phone. He's rowing across the ocean again. She said, that guy you met down in San Francisco? And I was like, yeah. She said, wow, that's incredible. And I didn't have the chance to actually inform her that Jordan had invited me. And it was a couple of days later, and we were sitting, it was a dinner party, my wife and me, and a whole bunch of kind of couple friends are having polite dinner conversation, that sort of thing. The conversation comes to me, and they say, oh, Adam, what's new with you? And I'm thinking about it, and I'd been mulling over this ocean, rowing across the ocean. I said, well, I think I'm going to row across the Atlantic Ocean. And my wife looks at me and says, you're doing what?
That, you did it in public, didn't you? So you didn't get too much flack. You thought, I'll just drop it at the dinner party and maybe she'll say yes.
Well, it wasn't premeditated in that regard, but it ended up working out that way.
Because you are a positive realist.
Yes.
Did you know that about him?
Yeah, I've heard all the jingo.
All the jingo.
So when you pick a crew, and there's a crew of 4 and 1 sub,
Yeah.
that's what I'm understanding?
Yes.
How do you do that? What are the key elements?
I think the most part is, I just got to get along with them. And I think, last time, all the guys on the boat were all guys that I'd rowed with. And then the second time around, I just think that I got a pretty good judge of character. So, when I met Adam, we definitely clicked. And I just felt like, he might be in a spot in his life where he would want to do something like this. And actually, right around the time that I was doing that race, the race where I met Adam, Richard Tarbill had come to me, and he was one of the guys I'd rowed with after college, and he said, I want to row across the ocean, so if you're ever thinking about doing this again, I'd be up there. And
Pick me.
Rick is just one of the hardest working people you could possibly meet, and just really, really good at what he does, and everything he does. So I just kind of looked at him and said, I've been waiting for someone to ask me that again. So then I called up my other teammate who I rowed across in 2006, a guy named Greg Spooner, and said, well, Greg, I think, Rick wants to row across the ocean, and I think if I ask this Canadian gold medalist, I think he's going to say yes, and if you joined, it'd be a pretty good team.
Because he has courage and guts.
Well,
and
yeah,
all of that.
absolutely. And Greg had swore that he would never row across the ocean again, but I knew he was lying. And I'm pretty persuasive.
And he's a hydrologist too. He's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
other-
absolutely. So I kind of floated
Other
that.
cred.
I floated that to Greg, and then I called up Adam. And if he had said yes, absolutely, I probably would have had more reservations. But if someone immediately says yes, that kind of
Sure.
makes me nervous. But if
Sure.
they obviously mull it over and consider, because it's a huge commitment, it takes a huge amount of time, and there's an element of danger to
You
it.
bet.
Yeah.
So you've got, so far, a geotech engineer himself, you, the writer adventurer,
And we have a flight test engineer,
and a violinist.
and he's the
Yeah.
flight and the
He's
violinist.
the flight.
Yeah.
He's a
Yes.
flight. He builds the Boeing 787s. He's one of 7 people who actually go on these airplanes when they haven't been fully tested. They test crash them, they test fly them.
Really?
When everything's vibrating apart, he's the guy who analyzes all of the, the equations and makes sure that our planes are safe.
So if something vibrates on the boat,
Which
on the small boat, as you
has been
call
happening.
Yeah,
it,
which has been happening.
on the James Robert Hanssen,
Yes.
he'll be the fixer.
Yeah, a combination of me and Rick. And then we have Greg Spooner, who is a physical therapist.
Oh,
So we got a medical guy, we got variations of scientist, and a writer, I guess.
because it sounds rather grueling, and that physiotherapist is going to be busy, as well as the cook. Are you
Yeah.
the cook? Is
I
that why he
guess-
called you
yeah,
cookie?
I'm chief cook.
Yep.
I've
Chief cook.
been planning and packing all the food, and we've been pretty lucky. A local organic market in Victoria sponsored all of our food, so we're packed full of fair trade organic food. It'll be incredibly healthy. It's
How
all
wonderful.
dehydrated. Yeah, it's very wonderful.
Well, a long way from the freeze-dried stuff.
Yes. Well, it's
Some
funny.
of it's freeze-dried, I'm sure.
We have a little bit of freeze-dried, but you'd be surprised. You think that when you go on an adventure, you need a lot of freeze-dried food, but if you have the right cooking equipment with you, you can pack a lot of dehydrated food. That's
Sure.
pretty good.
Sure.
Freeze-dried is more important, I think, when you're very, very concerned about weight. I think when people are racing and that
Or
sort of thing.
backpacking up a big mountain. You don't want to
Yes.
have cans in your backpack.
No. This is
true.
No.
No.
Okay. CWF Sailor Sea Expedition and CWF Get to Know Contest, all part of a wonderful launch at about 10 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, 10 o'clock at the Vancouver
Right.
Rowing Club is wonderful. Canadian Wildlife Federation, we're very happy to have them on board. And
Absolutely.
the Get to Know
Yeah.
contest is
Yeah,
wonderful too.
it's wonderful too, and we'll come back. We'll get to
Okay.
talk more.
Yeah,
Get to
love-
ask you more questions.
Love to talk about that.
Adam Kreek and Jordan Hanssen, our guests.